The night shift at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Station was usually quiet. Most operators spent their time checking routine signals from various satellites and space probes. But on this cool October evening, everything changed. Jack Wilson was sipping his third cup of coffee when the first anomaly appeared on his screen. At first, he thought it was a glitch. The readings were unlike anything he had seen before. Massive objects, thousands of them, had suddenly appeared at the edge of the solar system. Can someone verify these readings? He called out to his colleagues, trying to keep his voice steady. Within minutes, the control room was buzzing with activity. The objects weren't moving like asteroids or comets. They were staying in formation, holding their position just beyond Pluto's orbit. As more data poured in, it became clear. This was a fleet of ships. Up in the International Space Station, Captain Robert Hayes was the first human to see them through the station's powerful telescope. The ships were massive, some larger than small moons. Their surfaces gleamed with a metallic sheen that didn't match any known material. But something seemed wrong. The ships weren't moving at all. "Houston, are you seeing this?" Hayes radioed down. "The vessels appear to be stuck." Before Houston could respond, every radio frequency lit up with activity. The message was being broadcast on all channels in multiple formats. It started as a series of mathematical sequences, prime numbers, geometric progressions, and finally transformed into clear radio signals. "This is the Stellar Concordat fleet requesting emergency assistance," the message repeated in perfect English, along with several other Earth languages. "Our systems are failing. We are trapped in an unknown field that has disabled our primary and backup drives." The next 48 hours were chaos. World leaders held emergency meetings. Military forces went on high alert. Scientists argued about the implications, but it was the space station crew who made the first real contact. Hayes, following a gut instinct, sent back a simple reply. "This is the International Space Station. We hear you. How can we help?" The answer came back immediately. The alien fleet, consisting of over 3,000 ships and 15 million beings, had been traveling through what they thought was a safe passage in space. Without warning, they hit what they called a quantum disruption field. Their advanced engines, which worked on principles humans hadn't even discovered yet, simply stopped working. "We have been trapped here for what you would call 3 Earth months," the alien commander explained. "Our backup systems are failing. Life support will begin to crash in another 60 of your days." The situation became even stranger when the aliens tried to send their technical data. Their most basic systems were far more advanced than anything on Earth. They used quantum computers, artificial gravity, and energy fields that human science had only theorized about. But none of it was working in the disruption field. "Your technology," the alien commander noted with what seemed like embarrassment, "it still functions in this space. We have observed your primitive satellites moving freely through the field that traps us." That observation sparked an idea in Hayes's mind. He shared it with ground control, and within hours, scientists around the world were testing a theory. What if being less advanced was actually an advantage? NASA quickly confirmed it. The disruption field only affected technology beyond a certain level of complexity. Earth's primitive equipment worked perfectly fine. As the first day of contact came to an end, humanity faced an unprecedented situation. The most advanced civilization they had ever encountered needed their help precisely because Earth was less developed. The solution would require innovation, but not with advanced technology, with the basic tools and principles humans had used for decades. Hayes looked out at the distant fleet through his station window. 15 million lives were hanging in the balance, and Earth's outdated technology might be their only hope. "Tell the Concordat we're working on a plan," he radioed to ground control, "and let them know they aren't alone anymore." The greatest rescue mission in human history was about to begin, and it would prove that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. 2 days after first contact, The main conference room at NASA headquarters was packed with the world's top engineers and scientists. At the front of the room stood Mark Turner, a veteran engineer known for fixing complex problems with simple solutions. "Their ships are 1,000,000 times more advanced than ours," Mark said, pointing to the projected images of the alien fleet. "But right now, that's their biggest problem." The room fell silent as he played a video from the International Space Station. It showed a small weather satellite passing straight through the mysterious field that held the alien fleet captive. The satellite, built in the 1990s, worked perfectly fine. "Everything we've sent up there that uses basic electronic systems works," Mark continued. "Everything the aliens try to use that's more advanced than a 2010 smartphone just stops." In the back of the room, Linda Cooper raised her hand. She was an old-school mechanic who had worked on space shuttle engines for 30 years. "So what you're saying is," she spoke up, "we need to go backwards to move forward." Mark smiled. "Exactly." The next few hours turned into a fascinating reverse engineering session. The aliens had shared their technical data, and it was mind-blowing. Their ships used quantum computers that could think faster than all of Earth's computers combined. They had engines that bent space itself. Their navigation systems could plot courses through 11 dimensions. And none of it worked in the disruption field. "Look at this," Linda said, spreading out blueprints of an old Apollo mission rocket. "We don't need fancy quantum drives. Chemical rockets work just fine in that field. We've already proven it with our satellites." The team began working on what they called Operation Retrograde. The plan was ambitious. Build a rescue fleet using technology no newer than the year 2000. It seemed crazy, but it was their only option. Meanwhile, up in space, the situation was getting worse. Captain Hayes had established regular communication with the alien fleet's leader, who called himself the first speaker. "Our life support systems are beginning to fail," the first speaker reported. "We have 15 million people spread across 3,000 ships. Some vessels have already lost backup power." Hayes looked at the massive alien ships through his window. Each one was a city in space, holding thousands of beings who had never imagined their advanced technology could become a trap. "First speaker," Hayes responded, "we have a plan, but it might seem primitive to you." The explanation that followed left the alien leader stunned. Humans were proposing to rescue the most advanced fleet in known space using technology that the aliens had considered obsolete for centuries. "You want to use chemical rockets?" the first speaker asked, disbelief clear in his translated voice. "And mechanical computers? And analog radio signals?" "Yes," Hayes replied simply. "Because they work." Back on Earth, the preparation was moving at incredible speed. Every space agency on the planet was working together. Old rockets were being pulled out of museums. Retired engineers were called back to duty. Machine shops were running 24/7, building parts that hadn't been manufactured in decades. Linda found herself teaching young engineers how to use slide rules and mechanical calculators. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," she told them as they practiced manual orbital calculations. Mark's team made a breakthrough when they discovered that even the aliens' simpler backup systems were too advanced. "We need to go really basic," he announced. "Think Apollo 13 basic. Everything mechanical or analog where possible." The world watched as humanity dug into its past to save the future. Museums became workshops. Old technical manuals became more valuable than the newest computers. Experience with outdated technology became the most sought-after skill on Earth. By the end of the week, the first test was ready. They would send up a modified space shuttle, built almost entirely with pre-2000 technology, to see if it could safely approach the stranded fleet. As the shuttle sat on the launch pad, Linda looked at her old toolbox, now packed with equipment that most people considered ancient history. "Sometimes," she said to no one in particular, "you have to go backwards to help others move forward." The real test was about to begin, and humanity's obsolete technology was about to prove its worth to the galaxy. The old Kennedy Space Center had never been so busy, Even during the space race years, under the bright Florida sun, Linda Cooper watched as workers rolled out another modified space shuttle. This one was different from any shuttle that had ever flown. It was stripped of all modern electronics and rebuilt with technology from the 1990s. "How's the training going?" Mark Turner asked, walking up beside her with a clipboard full of checklists. "These young pilots are having a hard time," Linda replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "They've never flown without computers doing most of the work, but they're learning fast." Inside the training facility, 20 astronauts were practicing on simulators built with old parts. Instead of touchscreens and voice commands, they had to use switches, buttons, and manual controls. The sound of clicking switches and mechanical whirs filled the room. Bill Parker, an old test pilot from the 1980s, was teaching them how to fly the old-fashioned way. "Feel the ship," he called out to them. "Don't just read the numbers. Listen to the engines, feel the vibrations." The aliens watched all of this through video feeds, amazed by what they saw. The first speaker contacted Captain Hayes on the space station. "Your people are removing advanced technology from their ships," he observed. "This goes against everything we know about progress." Hayes looked at the feed showing the preparation work. "Sometimes the best path forward isn't always in a straight line," he replied. Meanwhile, in an old warehouse converted into a command center, technicians were setting up radio equipment from the Cold War era. Modern communication systems wouldn't work near the disruption field, so they had to rely on basic radio waves. "Look at this beauty," said Mike Ross, holding up a massive radio transmitter. "My grandfather used something like this. Who would have thought it would help us save an alien fleet?" The rescue plan was taking shape. They would send up 5 modified shuttles, each stripped down to basics. The shuttles would carry equipment to help jumpstart the alien ship's most basic systems, the ones simple enough to work in the disruption field. But they faced a big problem. How would they dock with alien ships that were never designed to connect with such basic technology? Linda found the answer in an old junkyard. "Look at this," she said, holding up a mechanical docking clamp from an old Russian space station. Pure mechanical action. No computers, no electronic locks, just metal and springs. They tested the clamp on a model built based on the alien specifications. It worked perfectly. The first speaker shared more urgent news. 3 more ships have lost life support, he reported. "We've moved those people to other vessels, but we're running out of space and time." The pressure was mounting. Every day, more alien ships were losing power. The 15 million lives aboard the fleet were depending on humanity's primitive technology to save them. In the astronaut quarters, the rescue crews were studying alien ship layouts. The drawings looked like something from a science fiction movie, but they had to learn them by heart. They would be the first humans to step aboard alien vessels. "Remember," Bill told them during a briefing, "when you get aboard their ships, nothing fancy will work. You'll be using flashlights, mechanical tools, and your own 2 hands. Keep it simple." The night before the first launch, Linda walked through the massive assembly building. 5 modified shuttles stood ready, their white and black shapes gleaming under the lights. They looked old-fashioned compared to modern spacecraft, but right now, they were the most important ships on Earth. She stopped by each one, checking the mechanical systems one last time. These ships, built with technology that most people considered ancient, were about to make history. "Be good to our pilots," she whispered to the last shuttle, patting its metal skin. It was an old habit she had never lost, talking to the machines she cared for. As she walked out, the sun was rising over the launch pad. In a few hours, humanity would attempt something never done before, using yesterday's technology to save tomorrow's civilization. The countdown was about to begin. The morning of the launch was clear and cold. 5 modified space shuttles sat on their launch pads, steam rising from their fuel tanks in the crisp air. Inside the lead shuttle, named Pioneer, Bill Parker sat in the commander's seat, running through the pre-launch checklist the old way, with paper and pen. "Pioneer, this is Control," Linda's voice crackled through the radio. "All systems are go. How do you read? Loud and clear, control, Bill replied, his experienced hands moving across the switches, just like the good old days. The countdown began. Unlike modern launches that were mostly controlled by computers, this one relied heavily on human judgment and skill. In the other 4 shuttles, crews of specially trained astronauts waited, each carrying tools and equipment that looked more suited to a museum than a space rescue. T-10, 9, 8. Bill looked at his crew. John Miller, his co-pilot, was a young astronaut who had learned to fly without computers in just 3 weeks. Mary West, their engineer, had been pulled out of retirement for this mission. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The roar of chemical rockets filled the air as the 5 shuttles lifted off one by one. The sight was extraordinary. 5 obsolete spacecraft rising into the sky on pillars of fire, carrying humanity's hope of saving an advanced alien civilization. As they climbed higher, modern satellites around them began to fail as they entered the edge of the disruption field. But the shuttles, with their old technology, kept flying perfectly. "This is Pioneer," Bill radioed. "All systems functioning normally. No effect from the disruption field." 6 hours into the flight, they got their first clear view of the alien fleet. Even the veteran astronauts gasped. The ships were enormous, their silver surfaces stretching for miles. But they were completely dark, floating helplessly in space. "By all that's holy," John whispered, "they're bigger than cities." The first speaker's voice came through their radio, sounding relieved. "Human vessels, we see you approaching. But you are so small. How can you help?" "Size isn't everything," Bill replied calmly. "Sometimes the smallest tool is exactly what you need." As they got closer, they saw the true scale of their task. The alien fleet was vast, with thousands of ships clustered together. Some were completely dark, while others showed faint signs of emergency power. Mary checked their mechanical instruments. "The disruption field is stronger here," she reported, "but our systems are holding steady." Following their carefully planned approach, the 5 shuttles split up, each heading to a different section of the fleet. Pioneer took the lead, approaching the largest ship, the first speaker's command vessel. The docking was the trickiest part. They had practiced it hundreds of times on Earth, but this was different. The alien ship was huge, and their simple mechanical docking clamp looked tiny against its massive hull. "Steady now," Bill murmured, using small bursts from the maneuvering thrusters. The other crew members held their breath as the shuttle crept closer. With a solid clunk that vibrated through the whole shuttle, the docking clamp connected. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. "First speaker," Bill radioed. "We have hard dock. Permission to board." "Granted," came the reply. "But be warned, most of our internal systems are dead. You will find conditions difficult." The rescue crews in all 5 shuttles prepared for their next task. They put on spacesuits that looked outdated by modern standards, but were perfect for this mission. Each suit carried basic tools and emergency power packs designed to work in the disruption field. As Bill led his team toward the airlock, he looked back at Pioneer's simple control panel. The basic dials and switches glowed steadily, working perfectly while the aliens' advanced technology lay dead all around them. "Remember," he told his crew, "we're about to step into the most advanced ships ever built. But right now, the most valuable things in this fleet are the screwdrivers in your tool belts." The real work was about to begin, and humanity's primitive technology was their only hope of success. The inside of the alien ship was like nothing the human crew had ever seen. Their flashlight beams showed corridors that seemed to go on forever, with walls that would normally glow but now lay dark and lifeless. The air was thin, and it was getting colder by the hour. Bill Parker led his team through the massive ship, following the emergency markers the aliens had set up. Behind him, Mary West carried what looked like an old car battery, while John Miller hauled a bag of tools that wouldn't have looked out of place in a 1990s garage. "This way," called their alien guide, a tall figure named First Engineer. Our main power core is ahead. But I warn you, nothing we have tried has worked. They entered a vast chamber filled with technology that should have been humming with power. Instead, it was silent and dark. The ship's quantum core, a marvel of alien engineering, sat useless in the center. Mary pulled out a simple voltage meter from her toolkit. Sometimes, she said, you have to start small. While the teams from the other shuttles worked on different ships, Pioneer's crew began their basic but crucial work. They weren't trying to restart the aliens' advanced systems. They were building something much simpler. It's like jump-starting a car, Mary explained to the first engineer. We create a small, stable power source that can then help the bigger systems restart themselves. The alien watched in amazement as the humans set up their equipment. Instead of quantum computers and energy fields, they used copper wire, simple batteries, and basic electrical principles that hadn't changed in over 100 years. Back on Earth, Linda Cooper coordinated the efforts from Mission Control. All teams report similar conditions, she announced. The disruption field affects anything more complex than basic electronics. Then came the first test. On the command ship, Mary connected their makeshift power system to one of the alien ship's most basic backup circuits. It was a risk. No one knew if it would work. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a few lights began to flicker. It's working, John called out. The basic systems are accepting our power. The first engineer stared in disbelief. How? Our best scientists couldn't. Because sometimes, Bill said, working on another connection, the simplest answer is the right one. Your systems are too advanced to work in this field, but these basic electrical circuits, they work just fine. The news spread quickly through the fleet. The human method was working. On other ships, rescue teams reported similar successes. One by one, they were restoring basic power to the most critical systems. But they faced another problem. The disruption field was growing stronger. All teams, Linda's voice crackled over the radio. Sensors show the field is expanding. We need to work faster. Bill looked at his crew. They had restored emergency power to one ship, but there were thousands more. They needed a bigger solution. Mary had an idea. The alien systems are too complex to work in the field, she said, but what if we could protect them? Like a rubber glove protects from electricity. She pulled out an old manual on electromagnetic shielding. We can't beat the field, but maybe we can build a simple shield around their complex systems. The first engineer studied the basic diagrams. This could work. But we would need to shield thousands of ships. Then we better get started, Bill replied. They began building simple electromagnetic shields using materials from both the shuttles and the alien ships. The design was so basic that the disruption field couldn't affect it. It was like building a fence to hold back a flood. Not pretty, but effective. Hour by hour, more ships began to show signs of life. The shields weren't perfect, but they allowed enough of the aliens' backup systems to function to keep people alive. In the command center of the alien ship, Bill watched as more lights came on. They weren't at full power. The aliens' main systems were still too advanced to work. But they had bought time. First speaker, he radioed. We've got basic life support running on the command ship. How shall we proceed? The response came back clear and humble. We trust in your human wisdom. Please, teach us how to save ourselves with your simple solutions. The rescue mission was far from over, but humanity had proven that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. As the rescue teams worked across the alien fleet, Mary West noticed something strange in her readings. She was checking the strength of the disruption field when a pattern caught her eye. Bill, take a look at this, she called out, holding up her old analog meter. The needle was pulsing in a steady rhythm. The field isn't random. It's like a heartbeat. Bill Parker moved away from the makeshift power station they'd built and studied the meter. After 30 years of spaceflight, he had learned to trust when something felt wrong or important. Control, "This is Pioneer," he radioed back to Earth. "We're seeing something unusual in the field readings." In Mission Control, Linda Cooper quickly gathered their best scientists. They started collecting data from all 5 shuttle teams, using their simple instruments to map the field's behavior. "It's definitely a pattern," Linda confirmed after an hour of analysis. "The field pulses every 12 minutes, like a lighthouse beam." The first engineer, who had been watching the humans work, suddenly straightened up. "A lighthouse," he repeated slowly. "Of course. This region of space. It's marked in our oldest star charts as forbidden territory." Everyone stopped what they were doing. The first speaker joined them in the command center, his normally calm voice excited. "Our ancestors," he explained, "left warnings about this sector. We thought they were superstitions, stories about ancient defense systems left by long-gone civilizations. We ignored them because our technology was so advanced." Mary pulled out a basic oscilloscope from her toolkit. The green line on the screen showed clear, regular pulses. "This isn't a natural phenomenon," she said. "Someone built this." Working together, the humans and aliens began to study the field in a new way. Instead of using complex quantum sensors, they used simple wave detectors and basic radio equipment, the kind of tools that would have been available when the field was first created. "Look at these frequencies," John Miller called out, pointing to his radio receiver. "They're using old-style radio waves, the same kind we used back in the early days of space exploration." The first speaker gathered his scientists, who were amazed by how much information they could gather with such basic tools. "Our advanced sensors couldn't see this because they were too complex," one of them admitted. "Sometimes you need to look with simpler eyes." Then Mary made another discovery. She had been experimenting with different radio frequencies when she found one that made the field weaken slightly. "It's responding to our signals," she exclaimed. "The field. It's like an old security system. It's waiting for the right code." The next few hours were intense. Teams across the fleet used basic radio equipment to send different signals, testing how the field responded. They were speaking to a system so old that only humanity's outdated technology could communicate with it. The breakthrough came when Bill remembered something from his early days as a radio operator. "In the old days," he said, "we used simple patterns to verify friendly signals. What if?" He took the radio mic and began sending out a basic binary pattern, prime numbers, just like humans had used in their first attempts to communicate with alien life. The response was immediate. The disruption field flickered. "That's it," Mary shouted. "It wants identification. Something simple, something universal." Working with the alien scientists, they crafted a message using the most basic mathematical principles, the same kind of simple, elegant math that all spacefaring civilizations would understand. When they sent the message, the ancient defense system finally responded. The disruption field began to weaken, creating a safe corridor through the dangerous space. It was a test, the first speaker realized. A test to see if we could think simply, to see if we could understand basic principles even if we lost our advanced technology. One by one, the alien ships began moving through the corridor. Their advanced systems were coming back online as they escaped the field's influence. The 15 million lives aboard were finally safe. In the command center, Bill looked at his human crew and their simple tools, the old radios, basic meters, and mechanical devices that had solved a problem no quantum computer could fix. "Sometimes," he said, picking up his trusted radio mic, "the old ones knew best." The rescue mission was turning into something more. A lesson about the value of keeping old knowledge alive, even in an age of endless progress. 1 month after the rescue mission, the Kennedy Space Center looked very different. Alongside the human spacecraft stood several alien ships, their sleek surfaces gleaming in the Florida sun. But these weren't the massive vessels from the stranded fleet. They were smaller diplomatic ships designed to land on Earth. Bill Parker stood with Linda Cooper and Mary West, watching as the first speaker addressed the United Nations. The alien leader's image was being broadcast on screens worldwide. Humanity taught us a valuable lesson, the first speaker said, his translated voice clear and humble. In our race to advance, we forgot the importance of simple wisdom. We nearly lost 15 million lives because we depended too much on complex technology. In the weeks since the rescue, the relationship between humans and the stellar Concordat had grown stronger. The aliens were fascinated by Earth's approach to technology, how humans kept old systems working alongside new ones. We would like to propose an alliance, the first speaker continued, not just for trade or technology exchange, but for learning. We want to establish Earth as the galaxy's first basic technology preservation center. The proposal was simple but revolutionary. Earth would teach other alien civilizations the importance of maintaining basic technology and simple problem-solving skills. In return, the Concordat would share some of their advanced technology, but with an important condition. We will help Earth advance, the first speaker explained, but in a way that preserves your connection to simpler technologies. You must promise to never abandon your basic knowledge and skills. Mary smiled as she remembered their time on the alien ships. They'd really learned their lesson about depending too much on advanced systems, she said to Bill. The changes were already beginning. At space centers around the world, new training facilities were being built. These would teach both humans and aliens how to handle situations without relying on advanced technology. Old equipment was being preserved and maintained, not just for museums, but as vital backup systems. Linda was put in charge of the first joint human-alien engineering school. We teach them about mechanical systems and basic electronics, she explained to a reporter, while they teach us about their technology. But everything we learn from them has to have a basic backup system. The aliens had also changed their ship designs. Every new vessel now carried a set of simple, human-style backup systems. They called it the Earth Protocol, the ability to function even if all advanced technology failed. Bill found himself teaching alien pilots how to navigate using the stars and basic instruments. Your quantum computers might fail, he told them, but the stars will always be there to guide you. The first speaker made one final announcement that day. In recognition of humanity's role in saving our fleet, we are establishing a new position in the stellar Concordat. Earth will have a permanent seat on our council, with a special role, guardian of basic knowledge. The alien ships in orbit had become a common sight now, but alongside their quantum drives and energy fields, they all carried simple radio systems that could talk to Earth's old satellites. Every alien crew had to learn to use basic tools and understand simple machinery before they were allowed to pilot their advanced vessels. As the ceremony ended, Bill walked with his crew to look at their old shuttle, Pioneer. It sat proudly next to a sleek alien diplomatic vessel, the contrast between them striking. You know what's funny? Mary said, touching Pioneer's weathered surface. A month ago, we thought we were behind the rest of the galaxy. Turns out we were ahead in the most important way. We never forgot our roots. Linda nodded. The aliens had climbed so high they couldn't see the ground anymore. We helped them find their way back. That evening, as the sun set over the Space Center, human and alien crews worked together, sharing knowledge old and new. Earth had taken its first steps into a larger galaxy, not as a primitive civilization playing catch-up, but as teachers of vital wisdom. Sometimes, Bill said, watching a young alien engineer learning to use a simple wrench, the best way to move forward is to remember where you came from. The human fleet might have been small and simple, but it had saved more than just stranded ships. It had saved the galaxy from the dangers of forgetting its foundations. The Earth Protocol would ensure that no matter how far civilization advanced, the simple, reliable ways would never be forgotten again.